best things in life require development. They demand devotion, patience, and a very long arc of effort in order to achieve. And it's actually in that effort, not in the outcome, that we actually develop the capacity to appreciate what it is that we're building. If you think about a great relationship, mastery over your chosen craft, financial sovereignty, or spiritual awakening, if these things were easy to achieve, then everyone would have them, and if everyone had them, then they wouldn't be as meaningful, would they? But the path towards these high-value goals is filled with distractions, especially now. At the exact moment a man is called to somehow rise up, to transform and to reach a new stage of development or a higher expression of his life's purpose, he tends to face all of these sneaky little mechanisms that pull him back into conformity, back into mediocrity. And I've been watching these patterns inside of myself. Every time I'm right on the edge of a new level or a deeper transmission or a bigger expression of my work, my ego has these clever little tactics to pull me back down into mediocrity. I start scrolling, I get tempted to watch porn, I start gravitating towards VR and gaming. These sneaky little avoidance loops that feel harmless in the moment. It's easy for my mind to justify, it's okay, it's just a little thing here and there. Why don't you get to have some relaxing time? You should be able to take some time off. Look how hard you've been working. You're supposed to have fun in life. It doesn't have to be serious all the time, does it? They feel harmless, these little slips. They feel so rational, so logical, so justified. But what actually happens is that they steal my momentum. And they're actually preventing me from becoming the man I want to be and achieving the levels I want to reach in my life. And I'll bet that these similar patterns are existing inside of you. And I see this in the men that I'm working with and coaching all of the time. Right at that moment when they're about to evolve or they're facing a pernicious problem that's been bringing them down, or they have to make a leap into a new stage or a new way of approaching their relationship or their personal practice, these sneaky distraction mechanisms hit, and that's when they hit the hardest. In my view, this is the archetypal battle between our lower self fighting for survival, and this happens just when our higher self is trying to emerge or manifest. So today I want to cut through this mechanic so you can see it more clearly, you can understand that battle and figure out what it's going to take in order for you to fully transform and to triumph against the parts of you that want to remain small, that want to remain passive, that want to remain comfortable, so you can actually figure out how to transform. If you're new here, welcome to Awakened Evolution. My name is Jasper Brown. Now, I want to set this episode up by explaining the crisis of the modern man, or the predicament that many of us find ourselves in. It's always important to have context before we get specific. And if we look at our lives on the surface, it looks like we have never had more privilege. We've never had more opportunity. Life is very convenient for many of us. Information and technology is abundant, and that's opened up an entire new world of opportunities and things that we can leverage to make our lives easier. Most of us live without any kind of existential threat or physical danger for the most part. And this is incredible, isn't it? Most of human history didn't have this level of luxury, this level of abundance. this amount of opportunity. And at the same time, that convenience also hides a very sneaky trap. Because a profound life doesn't just fall into your lap, does it? You actually have to consciously construct it. There's kind of an allure that comes with the modern world. There's a kind of promise. It's like a kind of infatuation with all of the development that we have. And I believe this is where so many men experience the midlife crisis, because we kind of follow the promise that society lays out for us. Just, follow this script, earn some money, buy a house, have kids, get a reasonable job, go to university, get a loan, save for retirement, and you'll be happy. And so many of us unconsciously follow that script for the first, 20, 30, 40 years of our life, and get to the kind of towards the halfway point, and then we start scratching our heads going, is that it? Isn't there more? I thought this would make me happy. I've got the car, I've got the wife, I've got a good job, and I'm miserable. Isn't there more meaning? What about the mystery? What about the hero's journey? What about the great adventure? What about the deep meaning and fulfillment and peace that I was promised? And so we become disillusioned and we start to question, okay, well, that map didn't get me the result that I was really looking for. So why? What's missing? And in my view, the developmental twist here is that society has a certain center of gravity in terms of value systems and what it holds as dear, or what it aspires towards, or what it teaches us to make important in life. And that center of gravity, I talk a lot about spiral dynamics and understanding the psychological stages of human development. That center of gravity that society holds acts as a force that actually pulls us downwards. It brings us up to a certain stage, but if we want to advance beyond that stage, it acts almost like a buffer, almost like just like a planet has gravity. If we try to leave the atmosphere, that gravity is acting against us and pulling us down. And so if we want to go up, it becomes quite difficult. And in many ways, society rewards comfort. It rewards stability. It rewards predictability. That's why we see so many people within society that have conservative values, because they like safety, they like security, they like predictability, they want to feel safe. And that center of gravity acts against those that want something different. Society does not reward spiritual development. It does not pursue awakening. It does not champion self-authorship or the courage to truly move towards higher stages of intelligence or growth and development. So higher stages of development, we can see that process actually requires more energy output. It requires more responsibility. It requires more discomfort. It sometimes requires the death of old friendships, or the death of old identities, old versions of you. It often requires the death of ways of being or ways of surviving in life that no longer serve you. We have to let those go. In order to make space for the new, we have to let go of the old. And so naturally the ego resists. The ego doesn't like to change. The ego loves to feel comfortable. The ego as a mechanism is basically it's a survival monkey. It's a survival zombie. It wants to take the path of least resistance that enables its survival to continue. So the ego will often resist growth at every opportunity. And so that's a predicament. We're somehow inspired or compelled towards growth. I believe that's a kind of like an inbuilt facet or an inbuilt function within consciousness itself. That's what drives evolution. And at the same time, we have all of these structures within us that want none of that want to stay in what's comfortable, that don't like the exposure to risk, that wants to settle and do it easy. So in my mind, the modern man is facing a bit of a perfect storm because his nervous system is overstimulated, and so many of us are completely overwhelmed by just the normal struggles to survive. I've got this aura ring that tracks my stress, and I can see when I'm getting overwhelmed by the things that I'm committed to. And so often I'm very easily overwhelmed, or I'm overwhelmed when I think I shouldn't be. I'm like, I barely got anything done today. I've just done this, that, and, ticked off a few things, and I'm deeply in the red. I'm in the stress zone. Most of us lack a clear sense of identity, or where our identity is evolving towards. And so most of us face a lack of coherence in our behavior. We say we want one thing and we do another. There's a lack of integrity between our words and our actions and our feelings. So every time we end up approaching a higher level or a new stage, the old self just panics and tries to survive by pulling us into the easy road, into distraction. And so without proper structure, without an understanding of where we are, where we've been, where we're going, our energy is fragmented, and it's so easy for us to fall. It's so easy for us to get dispersed, so easy for us to get distracted. And the parts of us that are afraid of expansion end up seducing us back into those comfort loops, because that's just what is easier. It's so much easier to stay how you are than to transform. And so this sort of raises an important thing, which is that most of us aren't lazy. We're just unoriented. Without direction, the ego, the psyche, will by default move towards mediocrity, because it's just going to move back towards that center of gravity. And so a man that has not figured out his direction will by default be a man who gets ruled by distractions. So the question becomes, how do we actually develop direction? How do we actually develop discipline? How do we actually stay on a path and figure out how to move from where we are towards where we want to be? That's the kind of whole thesis of this episode. Last month we were talking about semen retention. We were talking about sexual energy mastery and how to cultivate more energy within your system. And a lot of guys sort of express, okay, now what? How do I've got blue balls, that energy is building up. Now what do I do? And so this episode is really an accompaniment to that. Let's harness our energy. Let's refine our relationship to the fuel. And now we've got to figure out, how do we direct that fuel, and how do we overcome the temptations, the obstacles, and the traps that get in our way? And so for me, this becomes about discipline. It becomes about focus and moving in the direction that we want to go and grow. So a common mistake that men think of when thinking about this, most men misunderstand discipline. They think that it's about willpower. It's just an issue of willpower. It's not. Discipline is about focus. It's the ability to place your attention deliberately on the thing that matters and to hold it there for long enough in order for transformation to occur. So listen to this. Where your focus goes, your identity follows. Who you are will follow where you place your focus. And where your identity goes, your behavior follows. So who you think you are will determine what you do with yourself. And where your behavior goes, that's where your life is going. Because it's what we do on a daily basis. It's how you behave. It's the choices that you make. It's the habits you build. That will determine your developmental trajectory. So I got to here because I made certain things important. I developed certain habits. I started writing. I started meditating. I started reading. I started speaking and communicating the ideas so I could deepen my learning. And that led me to a certain point. That turned me into, it was my behaviors that turned me into who I am. And so there's, and within this, in order to get here, I had to be focused on the thing that was most important to me. I had to actually move myself in a certain direction and focus on specific things that got me the results that I wanted. And that turned me into who I am. And so it stands to reason that we can't focus on everything. A man who tries to improve in every area of his life simultaneously will collapse into overwhelm, into frustration, into paralysis. If you have this idea that working on everything is possible for you, then you'll probably also realize pretty quickly that you're actually getting nowhere. It's like the jack of all trades is a master of none analogy. If you try to focus on every area of development, you'll do none of them correctly, or you'll do none of them deeply enough. And so in my mind, sequencing is really, really important. Real evolution happens through a proper sequence of behaviors and actions and focusing on the specific things that actually generate leverage and lead to momentum, lead to transformation in areas that really matter. So we have to focus on the things that actually move the needle forward. And it's that focus that creates an order in your mind. It creates a structure for your psyche. When you choose a single point of focus, then your nervous system actually settles down. And one of the virtues of this, or one of the biggest obstacles we face, is that we have so much information, so many different perspectives, so many, we have the world's information at our fingertips, and we're constantly being bombarded by algorithms that are perfectly curating content for your mind to keep you on the platform, to keep you engaged, to keep your eyeballs glued somehow. And within that, we have all of the myriad of concerns within life, all of the things that we have to juggle: career, family, kids, making enough money, paying all of your bills, doing the things that you enjoy, staying fit. It's enough to scramble anyone. And so our attentional system is constantly being pulled in different directions, which makes us very scattered, very fragmented, and that is wreaking havoc on the nervous system. It's like the nervous system is your nervous system is constantly scanning for threat already. And when you jump and bounce from one thing to the next, it cannot settle. It can't feel safe. Your defenses can't actually drop because you're constantly orienting towards the new thing. And if you have ADD, or you know someone that has ADD, there's a franticness to that, to a nervous system that is structured in that way, that makes getting shit done difficult, right? You can't actually make progress because your inner world is not organized, it's scattered. Your nervous system is not safe, it's actually traumatized. So we actually can't make progress until we actually organize our internal landscape. We need our actions to stop competing against one another, or sort of like vying for control. And we need to prevent our attention from being scattered across a dozen unfinished processes or arcs. My partner recently became aware of this tendency inside of her, and she saw how she was, she used to claim that her multitasking was a virtue. That was something she was great at doing. She was awesome at multitasking. And when she really got in touch with the nervous system and actually understood what was happening inside of her, she's like, that multitasking is actually, it makes it difficult for me to get anything done. And on top of that, it's actually an expression of a dysregulated nervous system that's constantly scanning for threat and can't sit still. And she got a lot of results by actually slowing down and just focusing on one thing at a time. Which is an important thing to ground us. That understanding is crucial. Like, that's a key developmental insight. Without focus, chaos wins. And without focus, avoidance becomes the default state because nothing feels coherent enough to commit to. And without that kind of level of focus and commitment, nothing truly gets done. You don't make meaningful progress at any one thing because you're trying to do too much. You're trying to do 10 things. There's another piece here that a lot of men don't really get in this, or that a lot of people hate hearing, which is that focus isn't just choosing what you're going to do, it's also choosing what you're not going to do. So every powerful yes, or everything that you fully commit to, requires honest no. Like, you have to be able to say no and to stand strongly in refusal of things. You have to be able to cut away that which is not important, or that which is less important. And because we live in a society that has conditioned men to be agreeable, conditioned men to be people pleasers and nice guys, saying no is often difficult. Saying no often means confrontation. It means letting people down. It means disappointing. It means maybe people not liking you as much. And this is often why procrastination happens. Not because we're weak, not because we're lazy, but because choosing, like really, really fucking choosing something, like a path, also requires grieving the old version of you, or the old identity that won't survive the journey. So procrastination is the actual ego's path of avoiding having to feel things that it doesn't want to feel. Procrastination is actually a form of emotional avoidance. I find myself procrastinating when I feel like I'm not confident, or I feel like I have to let go of an old identity and step into a new one. I'm doing it right, I'm doing it at the moment, and I've been seeing that pattern of procrastination start to arise in me because I'm trying to step into a new level of my work. I'm trying to change the way that I transmit my message, and I feel like I'm not good at it. I feel like I'm failing at it. I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of pushback. I'm afraid of looking bad. I'm afraid of being bad. I'm afraid of feeling bad. And so instead of having to sit with the difficult emotions that come with stepping into a new version of myself or confronting areas where I'm not skillful, where I feel confused, or I feel like, there's growth necessary, there's a difficult process that I need to go to figure out how to solve this problem that I want to solve. And my ego defaults to procrastination because it's easier. It feels easier. It is easier. And then my mind comes up with all these bullshit justifications and reasons and excuses. It doesn't really matter. You can have a time off. Look how well you've done so far. You can afford to take it easy. Blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, the problem that I want to solve remains unsolved. And I'm solving that problem because I have a North Star. So once we understand the role of focus and how to get specific about the things that we want to solve, the next question becomes, how do we know what to focus on? Most men think that they need a goal in order to create direction. Yes, goals are great, and at the same time, they are unstable, they can fluctuate, they can change, they can expire, they can be replaced. It's easy. What determines your goals? What determines what you set your goals to be? So for me, I prefer a North Star. A North Star isn't just something that you want. A North Star is something that you are serving. And for me, what do I mean by North Star? A North Star, in my view, is your highest value. And what's a value? A value is just a category of a thing. It's a delineation within reality that we're just placing values on. It becomes an axis around which we orient our entire life. You can look at what you pursue in life as the things that you value. Do you value family? Do you value money? Do you value status? Do you value deep meaning? Do you value mastery? Do you value excellence? Maybe it's contribution for you. Maybe it's strength. Maybe it's compassion. And somewhere within that mix of value system, and we can look at, human development through the lens of values. We can easily that's what spiral dynamics is. That's what that model of psychological evolution or development is. It's just looking at human development through the lens of values and seeing how values are evolving over time. And you can look at and see and understand human politics through the lens of values. What do conservatives value versus what do liberals value? What do men value versus what do women value? What do Americans value compared to Russians? And this is a great way of understanding what people orient themselves towards, what people make most meaningful. And so for me, my North Star, my top value is truth. Truth shapes how I make decisions, how I navigate my relationship, how I train, how I teach, how I run my business, how I speak on this podcast. Because truth for me is, I want to orient myself towards that which is most real. The truth, what's literally the most real thing is the most tangible thing. It's the most concrete thing. It doesn't change. It doesn't fluctuate. It's truth. And I felt the price of living my life with a lack of alignment with truth. I was out of integrity. I used to lie a lot. And that caused me a lot of pain. Caused me a lot of confusion. It broke relationships. It broke the relationship with myself because I didn't have integrity. There was no consistency between how I was acting and behaving with how I was feeling and what I was thinking what I was saying I was going to do. Not a good relationship between those things. So I was a leaf in the wind. I would lie. I would, talk to one person and say one thing, talk to another person and say something different. There was no inner cohesion. And so through this very painful process of, confronting myself and looking in the mirror, I understood that truth is the thing that I want to orient my life around. I'm also profoundly captivated by understanding reality. And I want to understand what the truth of it is. What is the mystery? We're living a mystery every single day. What the fuck is it? What's the purpose of it? Why am I here? Why is there something rather than nothing? What's it all mean? And so I orient towards truth. And ever since I've done that, my entire life organized around this central unifying principle. That dictates how I behave in relationships. That dictates what I focus on a daily basis. This helps me to make decisions because I know what's important. And simultaneously, the moment that I drift away from that, the moment that I'm no longer living in alignment with it, I feel it. And I don't like it. I feel myself out of integrity with the thing that I've devoted my life to, and that my warning signs, my alarm bells are going off because I remember how painful it was and it is to drift and to not be integrous, to not be aligned with truth. So I'm overcoming my ego's defense mechanisms and my tendencies towards mediocrity and towards comfort. I battle that and I contend with that because I know what I'm orienting towards. I know what I want to achieve. I know that which motivates me the most. And for you, maybe it's something different. You don't have to follow truth. Your North Star can be anything that you want it to be. You're free to choose your values, and there's an infinite number of values you can pick. So maybe for you, it's mastery. Maybe starting a family, being a father, being a mother. Maybe that's the peak. Maybe it's contribution. Maybe you want to be of service and give something back to humanity or back to your country. Maybe it's leadership or purpose or excellence. There's also such thing as a toxic value, in my view. Money, status, anything that's kind of ego-based or vanity-based, opulence, kind of superficial or materialistic tendencies. Because we know money doesn't make you happy. We know that status can be a trap. If you chase power, that power will corrupt you. So we need to be careful what values we place as most important, because that's going to determine what you chase after in your life. So there's a lot of work to actually do around your values. That's something that I focus on in my courses, and I'll have whole episodes about this, about really getting clear about your values coming in the near future, because it's so foundational. For now, it's important to just audit yourself and understand what you're orienting towards. You're going to do this unconsciously anyway. Like, people move throughout life orienting towards their values, making choices, behaving in a certain way because they value certain things. So it's really important that you audit yourself and say, what is most meaningful in life to me? What am I making most important? And if you were to fulfill your values, that's a recipe for happiness. If I live in alignment with truth, if I follow understanding, if I live guided by love, and I seek meaning and I transmit value back into the collective, man, I'm going to live an amazing life. If I pursue higher intelligence and really search for knowledge and imbue wisdom into my life and transmit that wisdom so that it helps other people, man, I'm going to have an amazing life. If I resist the urges, to pursue toxic values and make money my highest principle or chase power, I'm going to avoid the traps in life. The main thing that I want you to point you towards here is clarity. Get clear on what is motivating you. Get clear on what you are orienting towards. Because when your values are unclear, then your life is just unconsciously reacting to the values that you get given by society. You get given those values, whether it's through religion, whether it's through capitalism, or the political affiliations that you have, or the career that you choose. So the choices that you make and where you orient your attention, this is going to install specific values within you. The kind of content that you consume online, that's going to start programming you with specific values. And so what you listen to, what you digest, what you talk about, the people you associate with, this is all going to contribute to your value set being installed and entrenched over time. So I think it's really important to understand that is a process that is constantly happening. And if we do work around that, if we clarify what our values are, then life becomes clear. You start to choose. You start to have agency. This is how we work up towards and build into sovereignty. Is instead of just being something, like a right out of the box, programmed by the default values of society, we actually do this as a conscious process. What do I want to be most valuable in my life? What is most meaningful to me? If I could choose anything, what would it be? What are the highest values that I could aspire towards, and how can I do that? When we do that, then the life that we actually start creating is something that will unfold in a really powerful way. Instead of being really unconscious, it's going to be deeply intentional and very conscious. So what I want you to get here is that a man with a value-aligned North Star doesn't need external motivation every morning. He doesn't need pep talks. He doesn't need reminders. He doesn't need hype. He's not reliant on external accountability, because his discipline flows from his identity. This is why it's not just about it's not just about willpower. Willpower will emerge naturally when you have specific principles that are installed within you. Like if we install a specific kind of app on a specific kind of computer, then the computer is going to behave in a specific way. So the values are like the apps your default apps inside your system. If we install the right values, then your focus, your discipline, your willpower, all of this is going to flow very naturally. It'll emerge. And your decision-making process will become very obvious. Your capacity to get distracted and to fall into those distractions and to stay stuck in those distractions will radically reduce. And your life will actually start moving in a straight, focused line towards your highest values and your highest goals. And in many ways, we can see that your highest value becomes the thing that you refuse to betray. And so once you know what that is, then your discipline becomes an act of devotion. Just as my life becomes an act of devotion towards truth. So I speak and aspire towards truthful expression in my relationship, and that has transformed the nature of my relationship. I aspire to speak and pursue the truth in this podcast, and that's what makes this podcast fascinating. That's what makes it deeply interesting. That's what makes it more profound than the majority of content that you listen to. because it's oriented towards a specific principle. And so then what do we do in order to build a container around that? Let's say we've identified the thing, we've sharpened our capacity to focus, we've developed discipline and motivation because we've identified our highest values or our North Star. Once we've done that, we need some sort of structure. I'm not a big fan of complicated routines. What I look for is simplicity, like a minimum viable container that helps to reinforce the identity or the values that we're moving forward towards. And so I like to commit to basically 3 daily anchors. The first one is physical. So as a principle of health and organism functioning, I've learned that physical discipline, daily exercise and movement, activating my system is just a primary pillar of health. And I know that if I don't do that, then my creativity stalls, my direction and motivation stalls because I start to feel low energy. And so I make physical movement and activity one of the key pillars of my life. And if I can tick that off in a day, I'm already winning. The next pillar that I like to have is creativity and something purpose-driven in my life. So I like to have a specific period of time where I cut out all distractions and I focus on my creative work. That's how I make this podcast. That's how I produce high-quality content and release it, because I focus exclusively on this one thing, because I know that if I do this, then so many good things happen in my life and I'm really moving forward. I get to study, I get to practice my public speaking, I get to deliver value, and that helps people find my work, and then people want to work with me and sign up for coaching or mentorship. And so I get to survive doing something that I love. And I get to express my creativity and express my love of knowledge and understanding and ultimately truth through my creativity, through my work. And I love that. It makes me deeply, deeply happy and satisfied. And the third pillar is something, what I would say, spiritual or self-mastery oriented. So I like meditation, I like breath work, I like psychedelics, practice yoga, something that brings me in touch with myself. I might even just take a conscious walk outside, no phone, and just be present, be in nature, be connected to myself in a deeply contemplative, spiritual way. And I find that that is nourishment for my soul. That's me pursuing truth, not as an activity, but as a state of being. And I know that if I do that, if I do those 3 things in my day, physical, creative, spiritual, and I can share that with my lover and be present with her and invite her with me, we can do that together. This makes me deeply satisfied. And what I'm looking for here is like small but non-negotiable forms of consistency. And this in turn, basically your habits determine who you are. So what I do on a daily basis shapes who I am. It shapes who I'm becoming. It shapes what I achieve in my life. And so that's how I approach it. And maybe it's different for you. Maybe you love cooking. Maybe you love time with your family, time with your kids. Another way that we could break that up is purpose, something that gives you purpose, something that nourishes your relationships, and something that nourishes you. Self, world, another, like something like that. You need to find a way to break it down into very small kind of non-negotiables, where clear, just simple but consistent forms that help you to break up and just understand what ingredients actually make you to move towards the thing that you're trying to achieve. For me, I can break it down into those three categories, and that pretty much ticks all the boxes for me. We also need to be aware of and audit ourselves for leakage. And I say that with love and with compassion, because I have a tendency to shame myself for my lower consciousness behavior, or my old coping mechanisms, we could say. But I want to move towards sovereignty. So it's important that I look at my relationship to porn, my relationship with weed, my relationship with gaming and scrolling and numbing myself. These are all crutches that can be that can tempt me back into old patterns. And I want to make a distinction. You can do all of these things with intention. You can do all of these things, and sometimes you need to do these things. Sometimes we need to reach for things to help us deal with the stress of life, and that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. However, do not stay there. Do not stay stuck, and do not loop unconsciously in those things for days, weeks, months at a time. Then you're going to fuck yourself up. We also need to be aware of the people who drain our energy. People that are more interested in you staying the same, or the old version of you, or the lower self version of you, and who suck you down, or who burden you and drain you. We want to be very careful with people who have this effect on us, because that's in direct conflict with what we're moving towards. In general, we need to be conscious of any kind of obligatory or things that make us feel like we have a like we're obliged to, or we have there's a kind of expectation on us through people or through environments that pull us out of alignment with our values. That can be old friends, that can be family, that can be people who aren't good for you, that can be people that are associated with behaviors that you want to cut out. We need to be kind of ruthless with this sort of shit. We don't want to get stuck in things or stuck with groups of people or specific, activities just because of social convention, just because we're afraid of disappointing people or people judging us. We need to fuck that off. We need to say no to that, because we're trying to move beyond mediocrity. And unfortunately, so many people live their entire lives just trying to make sure that people don't say bad things about them or think poorly of them. The number one regret of the dying is that I wish I lived my life on my terms instead of everyone else's. So I just want to stress that, because it's a really common conventional thing that we get stuck in. And just remember that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. If you think highly, very highly of yourself, and you love yourself, and you're in right relationship with yourself, that's what matters the most. Even if that creates conflict with other people. Obviously, we need to be discerning with that. It's just, other people are important too. They do check us, and they are mirrors for our growth and development, so we don't want to stay close to that. But at the end of the day, the most important relationship that we have is the relationship with ourselves. Don't forget that. So lastly, I want to start wrapping this episode up by sort of nesting what we're talking about here in the moment that we're in. So it's the end of the year, it's the end of 2025, that's the time that I'm recording this episode. And this is a transitory moment. So as this year closes, or as any year closes, or any ending that is about to preclude or lead into a new beginning, is a time for reflection. It's a time for integration. It's a time to look back and take stock of what has been, and to use that to inform what will be or what is coming. And we need to be serious about this. So I want you to ask, what did you become this year? Who have you become? What have you been making important? What have you been focusing on? Where did you grow? Where did you actually grow? If we were really, really darn honest, what was the result of this year for you? Where did you win? Where did you settle? Where did you leak your energy? What is the net result of this year in terms of your growth and your development and moving towards the things that you're actually aspiring to change or to evolve or to develop in your life? Maybe you could ask, who have you been pretending to be? What shadows have been sabotaging you? What masks are you still wearing? And who's the man that's coming in 2026? Who's the man that's emerging? What's the next version of you that you're stepping into? Where's your edge? And what would it look like to have discipline and focus and direction towards that? And if 2026 was the most important year of your life, how would you approach it? If I challenged you to treat this next year like it's your last year, or it's the most important year of your life, how would you do it? If you were to be really fucking strategic and really, really serious about your growth, your development, what you self-actualize, what you create, what you bring into being, what you realize about yourself or about life, what would you do? Every year is important. Every year is the most important year because every choice that you take, every chapter of your life directly influences your entire arc of development throughout your entire life, you know? Because what you have control over is the now, is the present. So we need to be aware of the past and to be informed by the past, and that sets up where we're going, where we want to be, and how we get there is what we do right fucking now. In the immediate, present moment to moment experience of making choices and crafting your behavior and focusing on specific values in life. So ask, what do I need to change every day in my day-to-day in order to create the life that I ultimately want? What fears, escape mechanisms, or comforts are preventing that process of rising up into that version of me or towards what I want? And what do I have to focus on ruthlessly in order to achieve my full potential? For me, it's pretty clear. I need to do more meditation and be more consistent and to get more hours sitting in myself and deeply, deeply contemplating my existence. I need to do more retreats so I can get industrial grade meditation and be free from all of the distractions of my life. I want to do more psychedelic journeys and deep contemplation work so I can break through into higher states of consciousness and access the truth. And I want to transmit those insights through this podcast. I want to do more teaching. I want to be more in transmission and to offer the fruits of my truth seeking to other people so it can benefit them and to help them find their truth too. And that's the greatest transmission of my love, is through this work. And that's my positive leverage. You know, that's what motivates me. That's what I aspire towards. And my negative leverage is the things that I don't want. You know, I don't want to keep looping in my unconscious habits. I don't want to revert back to old versions of me or old behaviors. I don't want to be out of integrity. with my values because that makes me suffer. I don't want to get stuck at the stage that I'm in. It's great, but I know that there's better. I know that there's higher. I know that there's more profound. I know that there's a lot more truth that I'm yet to uncover. And I know that there's a next level right there. And if I don't step into that, I'm going to continue to be frustrated and I'm going to continue to feel stuck. So what's it for you? What motivates action for you? What's your positive leverage? What's your negative leverage? What do you want to move towards and what do you want to avoid? What is it that really shakes you up? What wakes you up? What's it going to take to get your ass off the couch and have a serious crack at life? I want you to sit with that. Lock yourself in a room. Here's your homework. Set a 2-hour timer. Write down some of these questions. Sit down, no distractions, journal, contemplate, meditate. If you're really serious, do a retreat. Do a 3-day retreat or a week-long retreat with these questions. Contemplate what this year has been for you. Where did you win? Where did you fail? What needs to change this year, in the year that's coming, in order to feel like it was a fucking absolute victory? Strategize. Be a highly strategic motherfucker and contemplate this shit. That will get you results. And those results will fulfill you deeply. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please let me know. Leave a podcast review, leave a comment, just check in, share what was meaningful, share what impacted you, share what you took from this episode. I love reading your comments and really appreciate that. If you want more direct accountability and support, you might like to reach out, send me a DM on Instagram, or you might like to reach out for one-on-one coaching and mentorship. You'll find the links to those and all of my stuff in the description below this video. Check those out if it resonates and come and get in contact and find the deeper ways of working with me. Let's finish with a final frame. This is the existential frame that I want to leave you with here. Life is unbearably short. 70, 80, maybe 100 years. And a very good chunk of that is already gone. You might have 30, 40 years left, maybe 50, maybe 60, depending on the technological advancements in our lifetime. 50 if you're lucky. And the quality years are much, much less than that, aren't they? You can easily spend a good 20 or 30 years in old age. So you have and are operating with a very, very finite amount of time. There is no time for fucking around. So ask yourself, is the amount of time, get serious about the amount of time. You've got 30 years, 40 years, is it 50 years? How many good years have you got? How many years in your prime have you got left? Is that enough time to accomplish everything that you want? Everything that you need to achieve? Everything that your soul craves and knows that you are capable of? Have you got time to achieve all that? What about the stuff that you haven't even realized that you want yet? You considered that? Most men waste decades waiting to begin. Unfortunately, I speak to men all the time who come to me for coaching and mentorship who are in their 50s, 50s, late 60s. And they say, fuck, man. They say, what the fuck? I wish I'd started in my 20s or my 30s. Ah, fuck. So don't wait. Now's the time to get serious. Every year of unconscious comfort that you give yourself permission to lavish in is a year it's a year that you've stolen from your higher self. Every time you let the lower self win, you can do that a bit. It's okay to do that a bit. Cut yourself some slack. That's okay. But if you continue to do that, if you squalor in that, if you default to that, you are robbing yourself. You are fucking robbing yourself. Because time runs down, my friend. Time runs down. And in many ways, we can see that it's exactly that process that makes this path through life, the path that you're on, that's what makes it sacred. Because it's finite, it's constrained. And it's the constraint, it's the limitation, it's the finitude that forces meaning. Because it generates urgency. The stakes are fucking high. And death is waiting. Death is coming for you. And one day, sooner or later, sooner than you think, you're going to face that final door. And you're going to look back on your life and you're going to be painfully fucking aware of what you did, where you were hiding, when you let your fears or your comforts or the lower self win. And in sharp contrast to that, you're also going to see where you rose, where you aspired, where you pursued your highest values, where you embodied the hero in your life. So you got to ask yourself, what are you going to die for? What are you dying for? Because we're all dying for something. And so what values you choose to hold and what you choose to chase, that's what you're dying for. That's what you're making important. And so ask yourself what needs to change. What must you become before you face that final moment? Before you face the inevitable moment of your death. So that makes it pretty fucking real, doesn't it? This is your moment. Now is the moment. Don't wait. If you wait, it can easily fast forward 10 years. You've lost 10 years. If you wait, 2026 is gone. Another year, look how quickly this year went. It's already gone. Done. You're not going to get it back. There's a finite amount of years coming. So make this the month where you stop fucking around. This is the moment where your focus becomes devotion. This is where your discipline creates your destiny. Because one day, not too far from now, one day, your life's going to end. You won't have any more time. So make today the day that you start living like it truly fucking matters. Because it does.